Welcome to Expressions of Leadership. I'm your host, Michele Kawamoto Perry. In every episode, we explore how people from educators and artists to executives and entrepreneurs lead with authenticity, rise through adversity, and share the wisdom they've gained along the way. Our guest today, Mumbi Dunjwa, is a trailblazing founder and CEO of Naturaz, a 100% vegan hair care brand that's redefining the way to care for curly hair with her innovative moisture burst system. With a powerhouse background in chemistry, nuclear medicine, and technology, Mumbi spent over a decade in R&D at GlaxoSmithKline before venturing into the world of beauty and wellness. A fierce advocate for STEM and women's empowerment, she's also an award-winning chemist and a sought-after keynote speaker. Mumbi's work is rooted in a passion for stability, science, and creating products that make a real difference. Her journey is proof that with the right blend of science and heart, anything is possible. Mumbi, welcome to Expressions of Leadership. It's a joy to have you with us.
Oh, thank you so much, Michele. It's a pleasure to be here, and I'm honored to join you and have this very important discussion.
Well, you wear many hats: scientist, CEO, innovator, and speaker. How do you describe yourself when someone asks, "What do you do?"
Yeah, the first sentence that comes to mind is a jack of all trades. I've always had an interest or dabbled in many things, and being a startup founder, you have to wear so many hats, and sometimes it can get hard to keep track of. So yeah, I see myself more as a jack of all trades. I've been dabbling in a lot of things in order to build Naturaz, and everything I do is all integrated and part of the whole.
And was there a moment or person in your early life that first sparked your sense of leadership or purpose?
Yes, my dad was a major influence when it came to leadership. He was a college professor. This was back in Kenya, but he also taught in the US, and had studied in Canada, the US as well, and very well traveled. So he was a college professor with a PhD in philosophy, a focus on metaphysics, taught in the humanities, went into administration. So I remember him being, the director of educational foundations. I remember it after all this time because that title always fascinated me. And, dean of students. He was a headmaster of one of the top high schools in Kenya. This was before he became a college professor. And he was working with Jesuit brothers, I believe, to build an aviation strip at the school. He was a man of great vision, a man who really cared about humanity, a man who really sought for progress and uplifting others. And so this is what I was seeing my whole life. He loved academia. He would have lived in a house just filled with books. That made a huge impact in my life, and was very popular with students. He wrote books. He had a printing business. So everything was connected back to books with him, and was busy thinking of educating people. At the height of his career, he ran for a seat in government in Kenya. That's in East Africa, for those who might not know where Kenya is located. And he ran for this seat while advocating for human rights. And later on, he worked on building a university in Africa, when he was based in the US, really thinking about how do you even conduct distance learning, by forming partnership with US universities and universities in Kenya to begin with, and I guess he would have expanded, but this was before he fell ill and succumbed to his illness in 2014. So he really did have a huge impact on me and my pursuit of education, academic excellence, entrepreneurship, and always striving to leave this world a better place.
And what drew you to science, and how did that passion begin to shape your own understanding of leadership?
So science was my mother, which my mom was trained as a high school teacher, and in her younger years, teaching, she was setting curriculums for biology and chemistry, in high school. And then she later on, because we moved and went to live inside this big university, because most they used to call them lecturers, or the professors and the teachers lived there, and staff. So it was easier for families to be there. And there was a school there. So my mom taught, grade 3 to 12th grade, if you would convert it that way. But she was much more on the science side. She was the one I would ask when I would just remember some silly questions, like not even silly. It's a question children ask because the children are observant. And I'd say, Mom, how come the bananas were green and then they turned yellow? And she'd talk a little bit about the sugars that are the starch that's changing to sugars, the ethylene, gas that's emitted by fruits, and how that breaks down chlorophyll and that changes the color. Like, just little questions like that I think all children are curious, and we are constantly touching things and observing and learning and asking. And that's what sparked my interest in the sciences, but also in math. My dad had a huge impact on my math. And where that started is one time my parents would write shopping lists and send us to the store, or they would use that to go to the store. I guess it's the way they budgeted for the household and the food. I had 5 siblings, so we had a big family. And I remember seeing my dad adding the costs for food, and his finger was just kind of going down like this, right? And in my head, I'm thinking, how can he add that quickly? Like, Dad, are you adding those numbers? Yeah. And then he wrote the total, and I was intrigued, and I thought, I want to add like that. So you realize that we are role models for our children. We are always modeling. So that got me very interested in math and in numbers. And it's also discovery. I think when we realize that we can discover, we can innovate, we can come up with a solution, it makes you not feel like something is out of reach. And so my fascination just kind of continued that way with sciences. But honestly, I'm also very I also have a creative aspect to me. Again, dad's influence with music. He bought me and my sister, because we were really interested, some small pianos. He didn't buy a big one. We had a big one in the church and other places in the college, so he didn't see a need to buy one. But the small ones, when we were very young, we practiced on those, and he taught us tunes. I remember some of the first tunes I learned. We'd learn chords and combine them. So not only was I picking math and science, but I was also, you know, pulling some of the artistic bits from my parents. And then one last point I want to make about science and teachers is when I was in seventh grade, we had a math teacher who I think he was having personal struggles. And so he was not fully focused and present in class and teaching us and really taking his job very seriously. So he had a negative impact on us in seventh grade in math. And I remember eighth grade, our principal, school principal, she was a lady, I'll never forget her, took over from him and taught us math. And she loved math. And she was awesome at explaining it. Complete switch around for me. Ended up straight A, you know, in my math grade. So again, I think teachers do play a huge role in inspiring interest in young people. So there's teachers, parents, mentors, peers as well. I always felt the need to compete against boys. I have no idea, maybe because I looked up to my dad a lot, and maybe I felt like, he was a hard act to follow. So maybe these guys were a little easier to beat. So there was always that tug of war, like, I'm gonna beat you in these exams, and yeah, I'm gonna beat you, in so it was an interesting journey. But I had so many people influencing my journey in science and also the arts.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with this idea that teachers can really make or break what you end up continuing to study. I had a
Yeah.
very similar experience when I was in college. And
Yeah.
originally, when I went into college, I wanted to be part of the team that decoded the whole human genome.
Wow.
And I had a biology teacher in my first year in college, in my first trimester, and it was awful, absolutely awful. And it completely switched my entire major because I
Wow.
really didn't enjoy that class. So it really can make quite a difference in the path that you take.
It can. It can. And the message is, for teachers just to have that in the back of their mind. Teachers do a lot of work. I totally respect the work of educators, but the impact on society is huge. And as a woman, I feel that there's such a wide space in research that is helping uncover the root cause of problems we face. Even when you think about perimenopause and menopause, which is a topic that has come into focus because celebrities are talking about it, and the impact that this has on women and the lack of research in the space. And what about this human genome? Like, what does it tell us about women and how our body works? We just it really truly, teachers and people who work with students have a huge impact on steering the course of where we go in society, what we discover and what we innovate.
And you studied both chemistry and nuclear medicine, fields that really demand precision and discipline and deep critical thinking. How have those scientific foundations shaped the way that you lead and how you make decisions today?
Yeah, so when I went to college, undergrad, I don't know what inspired me to do this, but I thought I would want to go into medical school. And I remember having a discussion with my advisor and telling him what I was thinking, but that I wasn't too sure. And so he said two things, Mombi. One is, no, I think we started off with the first suggestion was you could either take biology or chemistry as a major, only because those are, even physics, right? But those are harder subjects. And yeah, if you don't get a 4.0 in them, but still do very well, so you're between, hopefully from 3.5 and above GPA, you should you should be able to get a very good chance at entering medical school. And so I took him on and took my classes, whether it was chemistry 101. So my advisor also suggested, because I was still thinking through what do I really want to do. So he said, listen, there's a course that the school is offering, and it's being done in conjunction with the University of Massachusetts. It's nuclear medicine technology. Go and do some research on it. I know if you double major or major minor, it's two difficult subjects, so it might be tricky, but think about it, because that's going to put you in the hospital setting, and you will work very closely with doctors, residents, nurses, everybody in patients. And it's going to give you a real sense of whether this is something you want to pursue. So I don't know. I was just like, okay, I was young. I didn't know what I was getting into. I knew it wouldn't be easy. It didn't sound easy. And so I took that on and got through with that, and it opened doors that I didn't think would open. And I'm very, very, very grateful for that. And I ended up pursuing a combination of science and tech and health. So so in terms of how science has shaped the way I lead, make decisions, I by taking some of these courses that I did, I had to be very resilient. There's also a lot going on in my personal life at the time. I mentioned my dad ran for government and challenged some issues that were going on with human rights at the time, and it landed him in trouble at a national level. And at the time, being in school in the US with my sister, we were receiving news about everything that was going on and his life being in danger, but won't go into all that. But our family ended up coming into the US, and my dad continued teaching here, and successfully so. But at the time that I was also taking some of these courses, my family was going through a lot of upheaval. I have learned resilience through that experience, tenacity. Like, there are times things can look dark and like, oh my gosh, how will I ever get through this? How will I even be able to study? There's so much going on. And just overcoming challenges and obstacles that could have stopped me cold. So I've learned to, really work hard, to be persistent, to be consistent, just through by taking a difficult course of study. And if I didn't do too well in a subject, I didn't get straight A's all the time. I mean, I'm not, a genius at the level of straight A's in all the science courses. Some are really tough, right? But you're studying hard, you're working hard, you're looking for help, you are meeting up with your peers, you're learning, and the journey is great, because when you get to the end of it, you're amazed that I actually did that. In terms of leadership, I think one of the things I always do very easily is looking for ways to improve. If I find that there's an issue, I'm not you won't typically find me saying, "Oh yeah, that's a big problem," and then walk away, especially if we are all getting affected. I'm always trying to see, how can I solve, how can I help solve this? Can we do this together, Michelle? And I see this issue. What can we do to solve it? So while I was doing my chemistry studies, I do remember that there were certain gaps that I saw, and remember talking to the chemistry department head about them. And I also talked to the school principal about what I noticed could improve in a positive way. And they actually took me on those suggestions. And then together with them, we started a program to expose middle school students to the field of chemistry. And I remember us doing presentations and the excitement of the students. And out of that, later on, that and my work in school, I was nominated for an award. I was called in to receive it by the American Chemical Society. So that leadership was demonstrated even as I was in my field of study. And in terms of solving problems, we are using data, we are analyzing data. So that has made me, in terms of leadership and growing Naturaz, be respectful of data collection, data analysis, and using that to inform the decisions that we make. Nuclear medicine technology put me in the clinical setting as well. And even though it's a science, that combines science and technology, it's quite fascinating to me. You're also dealing with people who are very vulnerable and who are going through very difficult times of their lives. It could be a diagnosis of thyroid cancer, and you're one of the clinical people on their path to getting treatment and finding ways of helping. Like, I remember a woman who, I think she was so scared of the treatment because it involved something called iodine 131, and it has to do with ablation of the thyroid gland, pretty much just get rid of it. Iodine 131 collects in the thyroid gland, and that is how it goes and destroys it and destroys the cancer. It's a very targeted treatment. But I think she was scared to death, about it. She had a young child, and we had asked her to come in a few times so that this treatment could be administered. And she didn't. I remember one day I asked, when she came in for a checkup, I went into the room with her and I explained to her why it was important for us to help her. And I asked her, "Do you have children?" And she said, "Yes. I have I believe it was a boy, a young son." And I said, "You want to be there for him, right?" And I helped her understand why this was important, and helped her. I placed her child as one of the major reasons she should do something so that she can be with him for the rest of her life. And I remember she cried, but she came back and she got treated. So, empathy, just really, how do you connect with people, looking out for people? So these experiences in science, in hospital, because people who are clinicians are really scientists as well, are have been very, very important, for in informing how I lead.
Yeah, that empathy is really critical.
It is. It is.
We're going to take a brief pause, so please stay with us. There's much more of this meaningful conversation to come. Don't miss a thing. Follow Expressions of Leadership on your favorite podcast app and connect with us on Instagram and YouTube at Expressions of Leadership. You're listening to Expressions of Leadership. I'm the host, Michele Kawamoto Perry, and we're joined by Mumbi Dunjwa, award-winning chemist, entrepreneur, and founder of Naturaz. You've also described yourself as self-driven, fast-moving, always ready to learn. Where does that inner drive come from, and how has that evolved as you've taken on more leadership roles?
I'm a middle child, and maybe that explains a lot. um, I feel like apples don't fall too far from the tree. So my dad and mom, I guess I emulated them, and I think just I really admired a lot of the things my dad would do, because he was always changing hats, and I think one finds themselves behaving like their parents. When I was young, I started gathering neighborhood kids. I didn't do too badly in school. So I thought, hey, I might as well teach the neighborhood kids and charge them 5 shillings, which was just a few, not even $1. And and I would gather them. They were younger, 3 years younger, and teach them math or whatever subject. I don't remember what I would teach. And the parents loved it. They loved it. And then I remember in our neighborhood youth group having, leading that alongside a good friend of mine, and just really taking leadership of that. And we would take on activities like during the holidays, like all the kids, because we all lived in close proximity and there were so many kids around, bigger families and so on. So that was a huge, huge blessing. But, we'd go out and we had these plans to go to camping, together. So we'd find a willing adult, usually a parent of some of the children, or two parents, and we'd tell them, we're going to raise the money. We'll find where to go. Can you come and take us? It's a church camp. And some of these parents were all about also supporting the youth. And so we would work hard. We would do yards, we would wash cars, we would watch the kid, like we'd do whatever we needed to do. And because I felt such an obligation to lead, I honestly, Michelle, don't exactly know where the drive fully came from. All I can say is my parents must have had a huge impact on me, and maybe I wanted to be like them, and then found myself just enjoying leading and helping and serving. So yeah, so I think that's what I would attribute it to.
Mm. I love how your parents have played such a prominent role in your life. It's really beautiful to hear. And you
I
spent over a decade in R&D at GlaxoSmithKline. So what leadership lessons did you learn working within such a large and high stakes organization?
Yeah, so it was such a blessing to be pulled into an organization like GlaxoSmithKline. I first got in there through it's like a management development program. It was like within information technology, and so but within research and development. And so what we did is we worked, at least my role was working with teams from drug discovery all the way to FDA submission, and being able to translate a lot of what was happening in what you'd call the business to the folks in technology. So having my foot and knowledge on both sides was so crucial to having those conversations and to helping put in that architecture and the systems that would actually support all the jobs were happening across the pipeline. What did this do for me? I did not stay within just one area and just dig very deep. I became the usual jack of all trades that I mentioned to you. And that I think is a very natural place for me. It keeps me interested because you have to know something about most of those parts of the pipeline. And so I had to work with a lot of different teams, a lot of different people, a lot of different personalities. There were many roles where I would be a lead role, but not have direct authority, but I'm leading a project. And so it's an interdisciplinary project. There are teams from different departments coming together to achieve this goal that we have. And being able to influence and get people rowing in the same direction was something that I learned. We had to create business cases as well in order to do some of the work we wanted to do. These had to be presented to management. You had to justify your budgets. You had to justify why it was you're approaching things the way you're thinking of. You had to be aligned to the strategic direction. So my goodness, I learned so much. I watched wonderful managers and I watched some that were not quite that great for whatever reason, right? And one of my managers who I'll never forget because he had such a huge impact on me. And what I really noticed about him before I joined his group, I remember him telling me I went for an interview and he didn't think I would be a good fit. But then for whatever reason, I ended up in his group. And he found out I was a great fit. So that's the one thing and he was so honest. He was like, I said this, but I was wrong. Like he was very honest and upfront. I was not punished for landing into that group. And then on top of that, he would notice my strengths and he would say, you know what? You're really strong in this area. You're stronger than me in this area. And I'm gonna let you lead this part of it and I will support you. I learned so much from him. I learned that leadership is also about vulnerability. Leadership is about recognizing what is strong in the people whom you're working with. You're an actual team together and allowing them to shine without meddling too much and supporting them so that they can do their job and do it really well. He was so instrumental in teaching me that. I'll never forget. I'll never forget that. And I have applied a lot of what I learned watching him do that in the work I do now, and just being respectful to the people that I'm working with. I also learned there were leaders in the organization who believed in being kind. You're kind to the vendors, right? You're Glaxo. You could tell someone, no, we are not purchasing that from you and not be nice about it, right? Like just learning to be kind even to the people who are selling to you and respectful to them. So I learned a lot. There was a feeling of we are helping patients live better and live longer. I remember there was a tagline that we had, but there was a real feeling within the organization that we were contributing to bettering the lives of people. And that's something else I learned for the work we are doing at Naturaz. We want to bring high performance, high quality, safe products for textured hair to the masses. And I'm sure that when we grow, we'll be able to look at straight hair and say, how can we elevate clean beauty for this population as well? So it had a huge impact on how I lead today.
Well, let's switch over to Naturaz. What inspired you to start the company?
When I was young, hair fascinated me. One, I think my own hair it tended to be drier and I think it broke a lot more because I never saw that much length when I was much, much younger. And it had just a dry, almost like a little brownish tint to it. But it may have been just the way the color was at the time. My mom even says, "Yeah, your hair, it never used to really grow." And so I think that may have subconsciously intrigued me or bothered me. But then around me in the community, I would notice women with some hair loss around their temple. So it would be maybe some mothers or aunties or just people in the community. And I would wonder what's happening with the temple? I felt that it wasn't normal. I didn't really drive deeply into that. But when I came to the United States and came to school, there was a culture of straightening the hair with chemical relaxers. It was very, very popular at the time. I didn't like it because my hair is fine. And so even when I used heat, it looked like I had used a chemical relaxer on it. And it would kind of fall flat, which I liked the length, but then I always wanted my body back. So I didn't. I didn't use the relaxers, but I started noticing people talking about scalp burns and um, hair loss, especially for women as they grew older. So that was bothering me. And so the root cause, because I started doing research on it, trying to find out what's happening, what's driving us to these, solutions, was mainly looking at African American people of African descent because of the coily hair, which I felt like, oh yeah, this one is a challenge to deal with. So let me try and find out how to solve this issue first. And what I came to was this coily, curly hair tends to be dry because the oil that we produce doesn't tend to travel through the winding course of the hair. And so the ends can become so dry, they can become so tangled, and then it's just a scary mess. And if you don't know how to style it, you might think that you've got to comb it all the time. And this type of hair does not like being combed all the time unless you've straightened it, and it's going to break a lot if you don't take good care of it. So that I started saying, well, if we could solve for the dryness, which allows us to style the hair and allows us to do hairstyles that kind of leave it as it is for a period of time so that you're not struggling with hairstyling before you go to work. It still looks good, it still looks neat, and so on. If we can solve for that, wouldn't that help maybe people make different decisions that don't affect them down the line? Because what happens is if your scalp gets damaged when you're younger, you still have a lot of your follicles functioning and and they're growing hair. So you might be able to hide some of the damage over time, but as you grow older and the hormones change, now you're hitting perimenopause and menopause, and the volume of hair isn't quite the same. So any issues you may have been able to hide become a lot more pronounced. And so I started thinking, is there a way I can use this science background that I have to do some of that initial research, to look at root cause, to look at, draw from my African roots. So I started going through that process of looking at what's used and what are some of the most nourishing ingredients that are fantastic for your scalp, fantastic for your hair, like aloe vera, the coconut oil, shea butter, especially from West Africa, like looking at all of these types of ingredients with inspiration from Africa, and then looking at the Americas as well. This is where I was living, and things like jojoba oil, which is from the Americas as well. Aloe vera also grows in the Americas, North and South America. Um, and then looking at essential oils, because the other question I had and that bothered me was when we look at cosmetics, there are a lot of hidden toxins in them. And the frequency, the exposure over time can contribute to hormonal imbalances, endocrine disruption, issues that we were seeing in the community. So that's really what inspired me to start Naturaz, is my own challenges with my dry curly hair, the product-induced non-genetic hair loss that I saw in middle-aged women, and the hidden toxins in cosmetics.
Well, we're going to take a short break, so don't go anywhere. There's more insight and inspiration ahead. Want to support powerful conversations on leadership and success? Expressions of Leadership is looking for sponsors who believe in the power of great storytelling. Let's team up. Email us at letstalk@expressionsofleadership.com to learn more. We're back. This is Expressions of Leadership, and we're continuing our conversation with Mumbi Dunjwa, a dynamic voice in science, technology, and socially conscious entrepreneurship. Have you had moments where you questioned your leadership or maybe your direction?
I look back and I tell myself, if someone told me how long it takes, how much risk is involved, how much money is needed to grow a brand, and laid this entire path in front of me. I don't know. I probably would have shied away from it and said, oh my gosh, this is what it's going to mean. This is what's going to happen. And I think all of us sometimes can look back and say, should I have made this decision? Should I not have? But with Naturaz, even though there are times, like I've shared, if I knew this path was going to be this challenging, I probably would have decided to do something different. But then again, I think about it and I think I would still have done it because there was such a strong pull to be part of the solution and not to keep complaining about the problem. Within entrepreneurship, there are decisions we make, whether it's someone we bring in to help work on a project or task that you have that's important, and sometimes it doesn't fully work out the way you want. And so that's where you make a decision, like, okay, where did I where did I go wrong in this evaluation? Right? So I feel like you can never be perfect, in as you go through life. I think you do the best you can, and where you recognize that there's something that you could have done better, you adjust and you grow from it. So yeah, there are many moments where I have questioned a decision or questioned, why did I look at this a little bit more? Why was I so busy doing this other part that I missed this part that was important? I shouldn't have missed this part. This has had an impact. So then how do we fix this? I think anyone who would tell you that there's no moment they question something they did, might not be really reflecting on that journey.
And there's always an opportunity to learn once
Yeah,
you've had that reflection time
yeah,
to see what are those decisions that I made or what are the choices that I made at that time and what were the results? And is that
right.
what I wanted to see? And if not, how might I change that going forward?
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
And what's a recent moment that made you say, yes, this is why I do this? This is why I created Naturaz.
Oh my, it's when people write to us and they say things that I didn't even think they would say. I have had some folks who say, um, for 60 years of my life, my hair has never been this soft and this manageable. Um, you know, it's so when I see that type of testimonial, it really does warm my heart. There's even one testimonial where at the end of it, this lady was saying, I'm paraphrasing because I'm not reading it, but they're on our website. But she was saying that she's even telling strangers on the street, telling them about the products, and at the end she says, I'm doing it, but you know what? They'll thank us later, as though she's already part of the team. Then I remember one other time we were doing a demo outside a store, and that carries the products, and we were helping with training, we were talking to the community, and this one is very interesting. There's a white guy, taller white guy with maybe his hair was about 2 inches long, straight hair, and he had his son with him, and he's walking, and suddenly we hear someone say, "Hey, your product saved my hair," or something like that. Your product saved my hair. And we're looking at him and thinking, this guy is joking. Like he's just trying to be funny, right? And he said, no, seriously, seriously. So he stops right where we were, and he says, I'm not gonna gross you out with the details, but my scalp was forming crystals, and I couldn't run my hands through my hair. And my wife happened to come into your store and she bought the shampoo and she bought the rehydrating mist and detangler. Remember, our line is all aloe vera, and aloe vera is very healing. It's even great for wounds, right? Um, and so he says, yeah, I've been using within 2 weeks of using the product, and I had tried everything. Within 2 weeks, this problem was gone. And he's busy, running his fingers through his hair. And I'm thinking, his hair is straight. And we're not talking to people with straight hair as much as the textured hair. There's an opportunity to do some work for people who might need more soothing products that actually help them with some of the issues they're dealing with. And so those are the sort of stories that really make me feel like I know it's an it's a it's a challenging journey, yet very satisfying. And this type of a moment just gives me the impetus to keep going.
Now, you're also a vocal advocate for women in STEM.
Yeah.
How do you see leadership playing a role in opening more doors for the next generation?
I feel like, we need to do more as women to research and innovate for a huge population of women in the globe. I mean, there's maternal fetal health, there's the menopause, perimenopause. We need to do much more work in the space. And I would love to keep inspiring young women to get into STEM and for some of this research to be done in more depth. Definitely think that more of us women should speak to students at different levels of school through college, as well as mentor. And where we can, we should have internships so that we expose young people to STEM and so that, we have more innovation. Yeah, yeah. So
Well, we'll return in just a moment. Stay with us as we continue this compelling dialogue. Leadership isn't just about strategy, it's about people. The Forward Project helps organizations cultivate strong, adaptable leaders who create thriving workplace cultures. If you're ready to invest in your leadership team, visit www.theforwardproject.co to learn how. Welcome back. This is Expressions of Leadership. I'm your host, Michele Kawamoto Perry, and we're joined by special guest Mumbi Dunjwa. When people look back at your work and leadership, what do you hope they'll say about Mumbi Dunjwa?
her work on earth was done with curiosity, tenacity, and love. It is done.
Such a beautiful sentiment. Thank you for sharing that.
You're welcome.
Mumbi, where can our listeners find out more about Naturaz?
So they can visit naturaz.com, and the spelling is Naturaz, or visit moistureburst.com. And on the website, you will also find store locations, and that will make it easier for you to find out where we are. And you can also visit our social media platforms using the handle naturaz_hair.
Now it's time for our advice question and our fun question. So let's start with the advice question. If you could speak to future leaders of science and technology, those who are going to shape what's next, what guiding truth would you offer them as they begin their journey?
So I'm just going to share a few quotes as guiding truths because quotes pack a lot in very little. And yeah, I think that will go a long way, hopefully. So my first one, which I saw one day when I was driving, and you'd ask me, why were you reading quotes off of a wall when you were driving? We were stopped at a red light. So this is what it says. I don't know who wrote this, but it says, you're just as limited as the walls you put around you. So you think of um, Thomas Edison discovery of the light bulb and so many other discoveries and how many times he tried this. Like, well, what, 10,000 times until he got it right? So we're just as limited because he would have given up and said, there's no way you can make light, right? And then the second one is it takes a long time to achieve overnight success. So when working on anything, it's not overnight. Even the footballers that we see running on the field and being so amazing, they've been playing, most of them, since they were really little. And so their career is coming to, the climax of it in, 20 years later. It does take a long time to achieve overnight success. And then it says, the last one is don't be driven by fear, be driven by purpose. And that's one that I believe I saw my name against it. So I think it must have just come to me one morning or something and I jotted it down. So don't be driven by fear, be driven by purpose.
And now for the fun question. If you could only watch one movie for the rest of your life, what would it be?
So I have two of them, and most people might think, oh, well, Mumbi is an adult. Why would she even talk about this one? But the first one is The Avatar, the cartoon one. It's really profound, and I wonder when I watched it, obviously influenced by my daughter, and she said, "You should watch this. Let's watch it together." And I said, "Wow, there's so many profound messages, including messages that help me as I grapple with the challenges that I face in business." So that's one, and I know it probably surprises you. And the second one is The Secret. And it's more of a documentary, but I I feel like when you decide to take on something that's very challenging, what you feed your mind and the care that you give to your thought processes is so important to help you get to the finish line.
Well, Mumbi, thank you for joining us today. It's been an honor to hear about your journey and your commitment to innovation and wellness and empowering women and girls in STEM is truly inspirational.
Thank you, Michelle. It was a pleasure to be here on your show today. And you truly are also a profound thinker, given the type of questions that you ask. And I hope you and the listeners will derive value and inspiration from our discussion.
And to our listeners, thank you for tuning in. Join us next time as we continue exploring the rich, varied expressions of leadership. If you haven't done so already, make sure to click on that follow button so you don't miss out on future episodes. Have a guest you'd like us to interview? Questions, ideas, or just want to say hello? You can reach us at letstalk@expressionsofleadership.com or connect with us on Instagram or YouTube. We'd love to hear from you. And as always, thanks to our amazing team behind the scenes for making this podcast possible, including our sound engineer, Graham Palmer, and my chief encourager and advisor, Jeremiah Higgins.